Welcome back to TableTalk Friday. I think we're just going to get right into it this episode. I'm Zach, and I'm joined by my one best friend, Drew. Notably, Seth is not here with us, but that's all right. We're just doing some fun hurricane recording on this week's episode of TableTalk Friday. Things are they're pretty wet, we'll say, in the southeast United States here. So fun times this week. But anyway, how you doing today, Drew?
You know, Zach, I'm feeling pretty good. Despite the hurricane, Hurricane Eric, I'm feeling pretty good over here. It's a little drizzly, a little rainy. I got a little wet on the way home, but I'm all right. It's not like the good old college days where I would walk around going Pokemon Go hurricane hunting because it boosts dragon types. I don't get to catch any dragon types today.
Yeah,
but good times.
When we got hurricanes in college, it was awesome because not only do you get to go hunting for dragon-type Pokemon, but also there was that one week that we got a full week out from class, and so we just did nothing but play D&D that whole week. And I think this was actually the first campaign that Seth and I did. So I don't. Did we get? No, we did have another hurricane week or like a short hurricane situation too. While you were playing with us in Storm Kings, though. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I remember doing that because that was a blast. We actually got to play a couple days in a row, and there was, like you said, there was the two hurricanes because there was the one hurricane where we got to do that, and then there was the other hurricane which I was an RA at the time. And everyone was going crazy because rooms had water flowing into them. There were puddles, and of course, if there's a puddle, people freak out because it's crazy. Can't get to class without laying your coat down across the sidewalk. But
yeah,
that one was nuts.
No mind to the actual flooding going on, but if there's a puddle anywhere that I have to walk by, yeesh, my day is ruined.
Yeesh. Oh man, and I had and I'm terrible with I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast. I'm terrible with shoes. Like, I will wear shoes until they're just little pieces of rubber on the bottom of my toe. Like, I have to just wear the crap out of them until they're nothing to make sure I get my money's worth, of course. And so back in college, I had 3 pairs of shoes, and 2 of them had holes in the sole.
Ah, jeez.
And so I had to watch which ones I wore. If it was like that hurricane week, I had to specifically only wear that one pair of shoes, and I know for a fact I did not because I think that's when I found out they all had holes in them because I started walking around just filled with water to the ankle, doing like rounds and whatnot in the rain. It was terrible, but it was funny, though.
That honestly, and you were wearing socks too, I assume, right?
Oh yes, of course. I have to absorb all of the water, Zach.
Every so you were
drop.
you had soggy fucking bricks tied to your ankles as you're making your rounds around campus. That's yikes.
That was gross. You know, Zach, I don't think I've told you this. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, and I don't tell everybody this secret, but I'll just tell you in the internet. So just a few people here. So I walk around one of my pairs of shoes right now. They're like my hiking shoes, we'll call them, right? I wear them like, if we're going to go hiking or like a long walk, maybe I want to go do some gardening or something like that, I'll wear these shoes, right? They're the kick around kicks, if you will, the slide in slips, whatever you want to call them, whatever the kids are calling them nowadays. And so
I can assure you it's not that, but continue.
So I walk around with these shoes, and I found out maybe a year and a half ago, I took the shoe off and it rolled, and I guess I threw it or maybe I dropped it, whatever it may be. And when it rolled, I noticed that there was something metallic on the underside of my shoe. It's like, oh, what is that? So I pick up the shoe and I look, and I found a nail embedded in the shoe, like going up towards my heel.
Oh, what the heck?
So I was like, that's sort of weird. But this goes back. This all connects into a full circle. I told you I only had 3 pairs of shoes, right? And 2 of them had holes. So this last pair of shoe, if it had a hole in it, I could not wear anything in the rain, Zach. So to this day, there is still a nail in my shoe on a daily basis to make sure that the hole stays closed so that I could walk around in the rain.
Wait, really? So you're just walking around with that
Absolutely.
exposed nail in your shoe?
Yeah, so it goes deep enough into the shoe And I think it hit just like the very edge of the back, like right where your heel is, where it kind of goes up through the shoe. So I don't feel the nail at all. I've tested it because, like a maniac, I jumped up and down to see if I could get it to penetrate the bottom of the shoe, which it did not. So it's perfectly safe, and it's holding the shoe sealed. So they're still good shoes, and I continue to wear them, and I don't want to pull the nail out because then I'll get all wet.
You know, so I completely understand the logic behind this line of thinking, right? And I don't have any room to talk because I'm also the kind of guy who just hangs on to a pair of shoes for forever. But Drew, I feel like if there was ever a good excuse to buy a new pair of shoes, it's the nail that, one day or another is just going to work its way into your foot somehow, Like it's not going to be easy, right? But like you notice that and it just might be time.
I mean, look, Zach, I hear where you're coming from. I really do, right? But I feel like it builds character. Like these shoes have personality because of this nail in it. I feel like I'm looking real fly when I walk down the street, Like someone's going to notice, like, dang, that guy's got a nail in his shoe. He's real tough, It's like the episode of SpongeBob where you have to get into the salty spittoon and he eats like a bowl full of glass or something,
Right,
It makes me real tough, I feel like.
Not to keep going on about this shoe, we do have a topic today for this episode, but it's not like exposed, right? It's just on the bottom of your shoe. Like no one's going to see that, right?
Well, I mean, but maybe I could do like a cool kickflip, or what if I did like a somersault and someone noticed? Like I haven't done a somersault in the last decade that I can remember, but what if I did do one and someone noticed? I think just the chance of that happening, I have to leave the nail there just in case,
Right. I mean, if you were in the situation where you're going into the salty spittoon, I suppose you could just like, lift up your foot like Andy or like Woody in Toy Story and display the nail that way. Like, how tough am I? I walk around with nails in my shoes. I don't know. Something like that. But
well, you know what? I suppose if I were to change my shoes at this point, I would be changing my aesthetic. I would be changing the way that I look, I suppose. Maybe people interacting with me in, I don't know, some sort of tabletop game like D&D would think differently of me. Maybe it's an important character trait of mine, which is a perfect segue into our today's topic, which is the aesthetics of your character, building your character. How do you make your character look? How do you make it work with your class and everything going on? Perfect segue, flawless, way better than Seth's segues. Easy peasy, job done.
All right, well, so that is our topic for today's episode. So, Drew, I guess I'll start here. And so, when I'm first designing a character, I mean, first of all, I usually do go from like a mechanics perspective, right? So I want to think about, my race and class and what specifically I feel like playing, right? But then after that, once I've sort of built out, all right, this is my my class and my race, and I've got probably a background already picked out, and so I've got like the general feel of the character. Where do I go from here, right? Because when I go into that first session playing this new character, I know the first thing Seth's going to ask is for everyone to, we're going to go around in a circle and describe to everyone what our character looks like, and sort of, just explain the general vibe. So I think there's a couple different ways to sort of go about designing your character outside of just the mechanics, right? And one of the earliest things that I did was I used to I would go on Google Images or Pinterest and I would just look up sort of the vibe of the character that I was looking for. So here's just sort of like a generic human fighter. I would even just look up like human fighter 5e and see what what sorts of images come up, and then I'd scroll through and figure it out. Sort of the general vibe. And then I used to draw my character. Like I would actually, I'd take, some inspiration from those images, and then I'd just sort of like, use that as reference and sort of put my character together in that way. Because right when I started, we didn't have some of the other tools that we're probably going to talk about a little bit later on the episode. So that was my my going in point, was sort of, all right, I'm going to draw this character so I fully understand, and then when we get into the session, I can explain and do all that stuff. But that's that was sort of like my first approach.
You, Zach, I have to cut you off just for a second. I want you to know, just the fact that you used to draw your characters is such a big deal. As a DM, right? When someone else comes to the session saying that they drew their character, this person cared so much about the story that I'm about to kind of unwind in front of them that they actually took the time to handcraft their character is nuts. So I want you to understand that's like a role model player right there, Zach. So you're killing it already, right? Keep doing that. I want to see more art. I remember back in college when you drew the painting of Oswin, right? Do you still have that painting?
No, it was Morwen, and you know what? I think that's
Morwen,
probably at my parents' house. Yeah, well, I hadn't played Oswin yet, but yeah, I did do Morwen at Port Last, where he was fighting off the Frost Giants. Yeah, and I was sort of into that for a little bit. Like, I liked to not just think about my character in terms of like, all right, this is their race and their class, and I'll just make up a vague description. Like, I used to really go all in on it and like draw it every time I was doing like a long-term character. I'd always, I'd do that legwork. And for Morwen, honestly, one of the inspirations that I sort of took for that character design was Link from Breath of the Wild. I really liked that idea of, well, yeah, because he looks sort of like half elvish, and so he's a half elf knight kind of character, and so yeah, I took some inspiration from him when I was designing Morwen, and then because especially in Breath of the Wild, that's like the first Zelda game where they really let you. Older Zelda games, you get like different colored tunics, right? But Link's pretty much wearing the same outfit in different colors. But this was like the first one where they really let you sort of do your little fashion dress up situation with Link. And so one of the outfits that you could give him is like, the Hylian knight armor, and I really liked the look of that. So yeah, that's sort of what I based that one on. But yeah, honestly, as a DM, I don't think I've ever had a player. No, actually, no, I take it back. I've never had a player in one of my games come to me with a drawing, but I always appreciate it when at least you have sort of like a representation of what you think your character looks like. Like, even if you just look it up and say, oh yeah, this picture off of Google Images, this is what I look like. Like, that's totally fine too. I like to have that visual there, Oh
no, for sure. You have to have some sort of visual, I think, to start off with. I know you mentioned before that you used Pinterest. Do you still use Pinterest today?
Not often, but if I'm feeling particularly cheap, you can find some good D&D maps on Pinterest, honestly. Or if you're really looking for design inspiration or whatever, it's not a bad place to start.
Yeah, no, agree. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to talk about just for a second, because I remember in college when we started playing D&D, obviously after maybe a year or so, I was like, I'm kind of taking my game to the next level, right? I'm becoming a better D&D player. I feel like I'm role-playing better. My combat and like strategy use is actually getting better here. So I kind of wanted to take everything to the next level. So I wanted some more inspiration for different characters that we might do in one-offs, or even things that I could maybe carry into Eknon at the time, our party rogue, things that I could take into the game that might, flavor them up a little bit, give them a little spice. And I remember someone told, because I was just trying to scavenge the internet. I didn't know what I was supposed to be looking for the most part. I hadn't really done it prior to that beyond maybe just a simple Google search of, I don't know, Loxodon cleric, and then hopefully you find a cleric that looks like an elephant,
Right.
You gotta hope and pray. But someone had told me to use Pinterest, and I absolutely love using Pinterest for D&D. I don't do it a lot today, but especially for things like our upcoming Spelljammer campaign, I really like sitting down and just messing around with Pinterest, because you can find a lot of really good inspirational art. A lot of people put just their heart and soul into some of these paintings or their sketches, or even things created on the computer themselves. Just so much well-made art that really makes me think. And if nothing else, even if you want to just kind of sidetrack off the aesthetics of your character, you could find some great inspiration for one-offs on there. all sorts of, like, even really cool monsters or just concepts for a monster. Maybe you find something in the monster manual, right, that you really want to use, but that monster doesn't necessarily fit. Like right now we're running Out of the Abyss, and maybe someone finds a creature in Out of the Abyss, but they're not really running that kind of setting. They're not running something in the Underdark, if you will, right? Maybe it's a heavenly campaign. Maybe you're off in Celestia or something like that, right? It doesn't fit. You could find tons of reskins, just fantastic ideas. I remember actually in the Christmas one-off that we did this last year, I remember looking up just like Christmas D&D art just to just to get some sparks going, just to get some ideas. And I saw it was someone had made a polar bear character just like yours, Zach, and it made me think. It actually gave you a very good representation of your Coca, right? With the polar bear with her Coke.
Please.
and her cooler.
Yeah, it was I think it was Coca, but it was definitely a man. It was a man bear, Coca the cola bear.
Coco the bear, but not Coco. Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. That's me. I'm the Coco man. Anyway,
make sure you hang on to that because that's who's taking us out of this episode, Zach. So,
perfect.
You get your sneak peek.
Yeah, but I do that all the time though. I've got so not necessarily Pinterest, but like anytime I find like some image that I really like and sort of just inspires me for D&D, I've got a folder on my computer just full of like design inspiration images. And so anytime I see something that's cool or like weird that I might want to find some way to incorporate into D&D, I always save that shit because you never know when you want to use it. But in that same folder, I also have a character inspiration folder. So any cool character designs or ideas that I might want to steal later, I keep in there too. Though I haven't been keeping up with that one as much, and that's sort of because now when I am wanting to make like a visual representation of my character, usually my go-to is always Hero Forge. And so not a sponsor, not talking about how awesome Hero Forge is, though I do endorse them wholeheartedly. If for nothing else, so Hero Forge is it's an online mini tool where you can create your own custom D&D miniatures. And then, the idea is they'll sell you either the STL so you can 3D print it off yourself, or they'll 3D print it for you and then send it to you. But I don't really use it for that very often. Sometimes, like for Oswin, for instance, I have a color printed mini for him just because, that's a long-term campaign character. And also I got it for almost free. So there was a giveaway that I won. So I was able to get that. But in any case, what I usually use Hero Forge for is just it's like the perfect D&D character creator, like in a video game where you just go through. It's got like all the races you want, all different settings, right? So if it's a fantasy or sci-fi or modern or whatever, they've got tons of options, and then just so many different outfit and object things that you can put on them, which really, if anything, it helps sort of get my creative juices flowing. When I'm thinking about, all right, well, what kind of character do I want them to be? When I decide, all right, well, how do they dress? And, ooh, that's an interesting item. How can I incorporate that into this character and make it more interesting? So I definitely love using Hero Forge for that aspect of it. But recently, Drew, I don't know if you've heard, but there might have been a new kit on the block that's also great for D&D character creation, and that's Baldur's Gate 3. I promised that I wouldn't say anything about Baldur's Gate today, and we'll keep it brief because this is a D&D podcast after all, not a Baldur's Gate podcast. But I do think, and I haven't played around with it in that way yet. I mean, really, ever since Baldur's Gate 3 has come out, I've been playing more Baldur's Gate than I have been playing D&D. I'm willing to admit that. But in any case, yeah, I feel like it'd be a great tool for this exact thing as well, though it is more limited in its scope. But they've got highly detailed well rendered characters in there, and they're animated, and so you can I could definitely see people using Baldur's Gate as a resource for creating their actual D&D characters too. But if you really want that, extra personal touch, right? I'll say Baldur's Gate 3, like at least in the character creator section, they don't really give you options for like different clothes you want to wear or whatever. It's pretty much specific based on whatever class you choose. So it's limited in that way. But overall, it's a good option. Absolutely, if you're not the kind of person to use Hero Forge, or I think Eldritch Foundry is another one that's kind of like Hero Forge, does the same thing. So I mean, there are multiple good options for it, is what I'm saying. But yeah, the different strokes for different people. And I definitely think at least once I'll probably make an actual D&D character with Baldur's Gate 3 just to to see how it looks.
Just to see if you can get a certain look. I do wonder if anyone ever used like Skyrim to make a D&D character, because I feel like maybe it's been a while since I played Skyrim, and it has maybe I feel like the customization options were pretty good back in the day in Skyrim. Like there were a number of different races you could be, and similar to D&D, right? I think you could be like the Drow, you could be like the reptilian people, right? There was a lot of options. Even a tabaxi type of cat folk that I can't remember what they were called.
Khajiit.
So there were a couple options there. Oh yeah, how do you pronounce it? Khajiit?
Yeah, Khajiit, I think.
Khajiit. Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a couple options there. I wonder if anyone's ever done it, because I imagine it would be the same thing as Baldur's Gate, obviously not nearly as advanced. But, creating a character and taking a screenshot or something like that and putting it on a token, which I think would be pretty cool. I tried using Hero Forge recently for a token, and I don't normally do that. I think my compatriots at the table are usually much better at creating Hero Forge, specifically Zach, cough cough, at making these tokens.
Yeah, I might overuse Hero Forge, honestly. Like even if it's just like a little one-off character, I'm like, well, I've got some time. If I've got the time to make a character, I've got the time to make it in Hero Forge,
Yeah, but you know what? It really shows. Like you could definitely tell you put the time into it, and I could tell you've actually sat down and, I don't want to say like trained, but like you have some experience with the program. I would love to sit down and get some more experience with it, because I tried making one recently for your campaign, Zach, with my character Ryu, and I feel like I liked it when I first started making it, and I put the token down. I was like, I don't know if this works. It wasn't quite like what I was going for, but I think it could be. It's pretty in depth for a program. I think I'm also not like the best tech guy, right? I think Zach would probably agree. I'm not the techiest in our group by far, but I just finished, or I just learned how to share access to our recordings just about 20 minutes ago. So I think it goes to show, it takes me a little bit to get there, right? But I really do want to sit down and get better with it, because I've seen, if nothing else, the one really good high quality mini that you did get from Hero Forge, Zach, and it's beautiful. It looks really, really good. I know it was you won that contest, right? So it was basically free, but those things are usually pretty pricey. But man, it was worth it, I would say. I've really thought about putting some money down and getting some like nice colored minis from Hero Forge. Recently, we talked about the quality on a lot of minis that we've seen on the market for D&D, and it's kind of gone downhill a little bit. Kind of expecting just some more quality, or even just more options, I suppose. But Hero Forge, it really was. You use it all the time when we were in person. Oswin's just awesome. He looks really good. He's all propped over like he's about to take a shot with his crossbow. It's exactly how I imagine Oswin to look too. You did a really good job with that.
I mean, same, and that's exactly how I imagine him too. Is because as opposed to my other long running characters, I made him in Hero Forge, and I decided, that's what I think he looks like, and then not to just be the nerdiest nerdy guy out there, but I also I went to the Renaissance Festival recently, and I did make an outfit that was very akin to Oswin. It wasn't like full cosplay, but it was basically like the vibe I was going for.
No, it was sick. You absolutely need to hype yourself up here, because I've seen this thing. I think you sent me a picture. I don't remember when. I think you went to maybe it was the Renaissance when you took a picture of it, but it looked really, really cool. I still to this day, I secretly wish all of us would dress up as our characters and get together and play. I think it would be so fun if we all looked like our characters at the table. Oh, it'd be. I gotta have like a big old wizard hat, or I know it's not what Pyth wears. Pyth does not wear a big old wizard hat, but I totally just want. I want a reason to wear a big wizard hat. I have to. I need it. I have to.
Yeah, well, and you are the master of playing in costume. Because for the Christmas one-off, you definitely had multiple character props ready, and you were just doing costume changes in the middle of the session, or like, wasn't there one moment where you had like two characters who were talking at the same time and had different outfits, so you were just switching back and forth between them? It was priceless.
They had different colored beards, Zach.
Exactly.
They were the same exact beard. One was brown and one was black, and I was just swapping between them rapidly, talking to myself.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like, you were talking. Yeah, they weren't just like talking at the same time to us. They were talking to each other, which is every DM's favorite thing to do, is just talk to yourself.
I promise I will not be doing that again this year. That was it was more than I bargained for and far itchier than I had expected. I gave Patrick one of the other beards because he was playing like the Santa-like character, right? And I think he took it off like 20 minutes in or something. It was just so itchy. It was terrible, but super fun. Like, props really do just make things so fun, which is why I think it's so important that you really put some thought into like how your characters look. And that might not be the first thing that crosses your mind necessarily, because you want to, Zach, I know you want to power build, right? You want to get the right subclass. You want to find out how many levels you have to take in certain things. If you're a warlock, maybe you need certain invocations. You have to find the synergy, which is definitely a fun part of the game. But you got to make sure you're pushing the aesthetic of your character. It's something that I did not understand correctly in our first campaign. And if I could start D&D over again right now and just completely reset, I would still make the same character. I would still play Eknon because I think he was beloved amongst the group. He's still one of my favorite characters, and he was my first ever, so he's got some sentimental value there. But I don't think I pushed exactly how Eknon looked enough, and he was a rogue, so I think it's very understanding and expected, that he had some studded leather armor and he had a rapier and a bow, because that's kind of the rogue getup, right? But
right.
I ran into multiple times, and I remember specific scenarios where I would get hit with like a fireball, or I would get hit with like a scorching ray, something fire elementally, right? And I would have resistance because I was a tiefling. And I remember multiple people at the table going, "You're a tiefling?" Like just being surprised.
Yeah.
When I've been a tiefling, we played for 2 years, and I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm a tiefling." So I don't think I sold it well enough. I think in my own brain, or I guess in a lot of our own brains, it could be very easy to think, this is my character because I made it and I know exactly how it looks, and this is how everyone else is thinking. But I think it's really important when you're playing the game. Maybe it's through your combat. Maybe as you're role-playing, you kind of tell people your expression as you're saying it, or how you move. I wish I could do it again, because I think Eknon would be way cooler now. I've done a much better job with my newer character than I did with the old. I think a lot of people understand exactly how wizardly Pyth looks. He's got the blue cloak. He's got the winter wolf hood that he pulls over the top. And funny enough, I talk here talking a big game about how good Pyth looks, but I've never gotten to mention, it's never happened, Pyth actually has luscious locks underneath his hood.
Oh, he does?
He's always, yes, we got those hoods, those winter wolf hoods in like session 2 or 3, I believe. So this was like, we barely got any time without these hoods on. And of course, I always mentioned that I'd kept it on when I think I should have changed outfits or explained the way I'd changed clothes over time, because we've been in hell for forever now. And I'm still wearing this like winter attire, so I gotta be melting amongst my party members at this point. But before the hood, right? Underneath the hood, he actually has, and from the get-go, it's in my original notes, he has a man bun, and on the back of his head, it's all kind of scrunched up.
Yeah. That's true. I just never imagined Pyth without, his locks and a bun, right?
I know, but I always thought that something would happen where, we were attacked in a certain way, or maybe I should have thought about it more, and maybe even more recent events, but I was hoping at some point that he would get hit hard enough or something along those lines, and I would be thinking on my feet, so that the bun would like fall out, and he just has like a ton of hair just like a set of like a drummer's hair. If you imagine a drummer in a rock band, I want it to be that, just down to like past his shoulders.
Dang.
I think it'd be super funny for someone so like trained, you know, because he's a wizard. He's got like a 20 intelligence, right? He's super studious all the time, which was kind of my reasoning for giving him longer hair, which I think is a good way to, I guess, think about your character. Like, what are they doing, right? So maybe a rogue, right? Maybe they're clean shaven because they're really into blades, throwing daggers or something along those lines. I like the idea that my wizard here, he's always studying, so he never has time to cut his hair, so it just grows really long. You know,
right?
I think there's a lot of really good ways to do it.
You know, and that's a good point too. And so, sort of to segue into away from sort of the method for how what you use to design your character. When I'm designing a character, I think that's super important, is to think about not just like visual storytelling, but how do you want to tell your story through the non-mechanical options that you have for making your character. So I'll give you an example. When you're playing a fighter, all right, yeah. So say you want to use a sword and a shield, right? Or you want a one-handed weapon and a shield. There are a ton of different one-handed weapon options that all are mechanically pretty much the same thing. Like a sword, a battle axe, a warhammer, a war pick, a morning star. They're all a D8, right? And if you're using that shield in the other hand, mechanically there is no difference between all these different weapons. And so, or it could even be a rapier if you want. So why do you choose one versus the other? It always comes down to, for me, all right, well, what way does this character express themselves through the object that I choose, right? I feel like my first D&D character I made, Hamog, was a paladin, and I chose the warhammer specifically because I imagined him as like a defender, right? He's not going into combat to kill. He wants this blunted edge so that he can deal a hefty blow, but ultimately resolve the conflict without murder, right? That's ultimately his goal. And then for my next character, though, Quinn, I decided, all right, no, this guy's a hunter, and he is all about getting that kill blow. So I gave him a longsword instead. Still the same vibe, sword and shield, or one-handed weapon and shield. And they both did a D8. They both had I think with Hamog I went with the protective fighting style. But in any case, it's still the same basic vibe, right? But just that choice in and of itself, I felt was an interesting one. And to sort of tie this into one of your characters, Drew, I feel like one of the things that we don't talk about enough with Pyth is just how interesting you decided to make his spell casting. Because with most wizards or any spellcaster in D&D, you expect them to just have an arcane focus of some kind, right? You use a wand, you use a staff. Maybe if you're extra weird, you've got like a crystal ball that you use. But Pyth doesn't even do any of that. And you sort of made your own method for how Pyth casts his spells. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I think the idea for this theme, right, this came about because we knew we were going to be playing Descent into Avernus. We knew this was going to be a 1 to 20. We had braced beforehand. We had all discussed and agreed this was going to be a 1 to 20. We were going all the way. And I had just finished playing a melee character, a rogue. And, I had a couple really cool magic items that I feel like I didn't get to maximize. I didn't get to use them all for their intended value. And so I said, you know what? 1 to 20, I'm going to go all the way. I want to be a classic spell slinger. And what better way to be a spell slinger than to actually have a sling and sling spells? It was punny, but it was also very direct. I really just wanted to throw spells around, and I thought that was super fun. So I started with that idea, and Pyth kind of started off as, I don't want to say like a street rat, but he didn't really know anything because he had his memory sort of wiped out. I kind of gave Seth, the DM, the creative freedom to kind of do some stuff with Pyth and kind of mold him into the story in his own way. We were going 1 to 20, so I wanted it to be completely open-ended, that Pyth would completely fit in with the story. So I did exactly that, and I made him as wizardy and as adventure-y, I'm going to use that as a word, as I could. So on top of the spell slinging, I figured, you know what, let's get even more into casting, right? Let's get the full experience. Instead of doing a casting focus, right, or an arcane focus, I decided to go with the components, being a component caster, which I thought would be a little more interesting. I think it's definitely more difficult from a gameplay perspective, but if you're someone that wants something a little different from your caster, whether you be, a cleric or a ranger or whatever it may be, taking the component route is really fun. It really is. It really challenges you, especially in the beginning levels, where you really got to think about what you're using to cast these spells, right? Where have you gotten these components? How do they tie into your character? And so being this, new person on the streets here who doesn't remember who he is, who just decides to go to magic school because he doesn't know what else to do, and he wants to make something of himself because he doesn't know who he is. He wants to become something. So he literally starts creating things that he can use. So, some of the components that are not exact, right? Eventually we run into Oswin Alemaker, and he has this automaton named Stein. And so when I got third level spells and I wanted to take the slow spell, instead of using tree sap, which wasn't necessarily available, I used some of the grease and grime off of Stein, So it really gives you fun options for just creating a whole new type of character, in a sense. It does become a little bit harder as you go. I would say give component casting a try at least once for sure. Sometimes it's nice to go back to the arcane focus just for simplicity. But I really do like the flavor in component casting. So give that a go if you guys haven't. And think about what you could use. And, of course, talk to your DM about it, because maybe he is a little more to the book, and maybe you have to use those specific items and find them or purchase them at the local magic store, if you will, right? But go ahead and give it a go and think of fun things your character would utilize. And even beyond casting, although I would like to refer back to Zach, one of Patrick's characters, Doorknob, who I think was one of the best flavorful characters he's ever made, but also one of the most flavorful characters aesthetically at our table.
Oh, for sure.
Because I still think about him all the time, and I'm sure you probably do too when you're thinking of making a cleric or something along the lines. He actually, if we haven't told everyone listening here, he created a cleric, and I want to say he was a Twilight cleric at the time.
Yep.
But he was studying at the same school that me and Hakili, so the wizard and the sorcerer, were studying at. And he was a cleric, but he was really dumb. And clerics are very wise class. They use wisdom as their casting modifier. So he decided to, instead of having, like a spell book or, having like a general focus that he held, like an emblem, he actually had tattooed spells on himself. So I think he was proficient with some sort of tattoo kit or maybe an artistry kit of some sort. And he used that to put the spell slots on his body. So as he activated these fun spells, he would, slap the tattoo on his arm or on his chest, wherever it may be, and it would glow and activate. And he mentioned how they would kind of move around and like the pictures would actually begin to morph, which I think is just so creative. I love the idea of magic tattoos, period, and people have heard about them before, but the idea of just having them all over your body as the way you cast was so creative, and I'm such a big fan. I don't know if I tell Patrick that enough, but that was such a good character he made that day. We got to give him more props.
Oh, for sure. And so, when you're creating a character, you have, all these ideas to think about. And just to sort of harp on Pyth again, I really can't explain. I mean, so it is dependent on your DM, if you want to go the component casting route, right? But I can't tell you just how much fun it's been and what opportunities the way Pyth has cast his spells has opened up for our characters to, interact, right? Because if you're just a wizard who has your arcane focus, all right, well, you really don't have to think about casting spells most of the time. Unless there's some, material component that costs something, you're not really going to be thinking about, all right, well, how do I get these materials together? And for Seth, it really was like, all right, you have a component pouch. I trust you to, Pyth will have the things that he needs. And so any, collecting of materials is really, it's on you to make it make sense in character, and we'll run with it, And so what was so cool about having those, making that choice is because I was an artificer in the party. And so anytime there's something that Pyth needs specific for casting a spell, Oswin and Pyth we'll do a little jam sesh where we'll think about, all right, let's get you what you need to be able to cast this spell. And so, we've really become, good friends and colleagues, in addition to, fighting monsters and adventuring together, just in the fact that, we're always working on our spells together, right? Because you're the better caster, but I'm the better creator. So I'm doing the building and fueling your spells with the things that I make, and then you're showing me what it is to actually cast powerful magic. So that just that synergy, and so that's another good avenue to think about. Is not just, all right, well, what's the story of my character? What kind of armor do they wear, or what objects do they want to use? But think about, all right, well, what do the decisions that I make for my character do for the story that we're about to tell? Understanding that there's going to be other adventurers, like, for instance, if I know there's a paladin in the group and, they worship a particular god, right? Well, what does it do if I say, all right, well, I'm playing a druid, but, I've got some element about me that's just antithetical to, that god that they worship. We'll say that, this is a paladin of Lathander, so they worship the sun, and I'm all about Saluna. Like I'm a moon druid through and through. And so, like, how can we think about design elements that make us butt heads, right? Or any example. Maybe sun and moon are a little too close together, but like, there's a life cleric and I choose to be a spore druid. And now all of a sudden it's like, you shouldn't be bringing people back from the dead like that. Just things like that you can think about to make a more interesting story. And obviously we don't want to make characters that are like antagonistic towards one another, but if you can find ways to, just make it interesting, right? With the group that you've got. This is the reason why I advocate for a session 0, especially if you're in a group where everyone sort of knows each other. And we've got a good group dynamic, but I like to have that session 0 if you can, just so that everyone can talk about, what ideas they're thinking for the story that we're about to tell. And so, you can make these decisions sort of together. Say, I want my character to be related to someone else. Can we make that happen? Things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that does play into the actual look of your character too. Just how you interact with each other, right? I remember back when, as far as theming goes, because theming plays a big role in that. I don't know if you remember when Arafras was first introduced, and he had his his animated sword that was his wife's soul was trapped inside the sword. That session, I was playing Rogan, the long death monk. It worked out perfectly that he had a passed on wife, right, that he spoke to. He was basically being haunted in a sense, right?
Yep.
And me being the long death monk, I had themed my character around like the passing of life, right? And I played him as that he was very interested in death, and he had studied it for a very long period of time. And I loved the way that, I don't think we got to dive into it quite as much as I wanted to, because it was I think it was a one-off, or no, it wasn't one. It was one of our character arcs, wasn't it?
Yep.
That's
yeah,
right,
it was Oswin's
Mm-hmm.
arc, and then of course, Sean was playing Adonis for that.
Yeah. Oh gosh. It's really funny how sometimes the theme of your character, and maybe even taking a step away from the aesthetic, just the overall vibe of your character, if you put that time into it, sometimes it just works out. They just perfectly mesh with somebody else. I know you mentioned it, Zach, between Oswin and Pyth, but as you were talking about it, I'm sitting here thinking like, man, our stories and our personalities just mesh so well. I think back to just some really cool moments where, like, I remember we were in that bar fight. I think we were in Baldur's Gate.
Yep.
Oh gosh, I can't remember what the tavern we were in. We were fighting pirates.
Yeah, it was like the low lantern or something.
Oh yeah, something like that.
It was the one that was on a pirate ship.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that was such a cool place. We got to go back there. I mean, we're probably over leveled now. We probably can't, but I love that place. It was
We
cool.
can finish the campaign in Baldur's Gate if we really want to.
Perfect. Yes, it's full circle. But I remember because you were all about brewing your ales, right? You were Oswin Alemaker. You made ales, and so I remember I went down so many times in the first couple sessions that you had to keep reviving me with the aid spell. That you cast the aid spell with your brews. And so, we kind of started to bond because, I liked your ale. I was like, oh, it's really good because you kept giving it to me and bringing me back to life is what it was. And that was when I started using, and I haven't done it in quite some time, I don't think. But specifically in that fight, I remember I started using your bottles as components. And I remember I dropped some sulfur and I ignited like a firebolt into the bottle to get the fireball going. And I shook the bottle so it got like all fizzy and I threw it. And I thought that was such a cool bonding moment between the two of us. And another great thing you did was as your artificer, kind of giving that very crafty vibe, really giving us the visual of you being this real true artificer. You're really crafting things all the time. Those hail tombs that you made, those bombs that were super sick that we have to get more of. I remember I loved talking to Oswin and getting those from you because I was catapulting them around. And in those moments when I was casting catapult and launching these bombs at the enemy, it wasn't something I was doing. That was something that we had done. Like our characters were blending well. And when that hail tomb went off and killed a bunch of things, it was a full team attack. It wasn't just Pyth doing it. It wasn't just Oswin doing it. It was a full blown team effort. And I love that mesh. I really, really do. We have a bromance, Zach. I think Pyth and Oz. We have to have some fan fictions written.
No, I think we've defined it. It's definitely like a father-son dynamic. Absolutely. Because, Pyth's got his daddy issues with Mordenkainen or Kainen. I can never decide how to pronounce it. But
heat of the moment kind of thing. Honestly, I change it. I change it from time to time.
Of course, yeah. But anyway, that's character design in a nutshell. Any closing thoughts, Drew, before we wrap out this episode?
I just got to say, when you think of your character, when you're building them, when you're taking your time for a campaign, or, even if you have the time for a one-off, really try to shine through with how your character comes across and looks. Don't be afraid to really describe it as you're in combat, as you're talking to other players. Maybe say, what expression that you're making, or what your hair happens to be doing as you're sprinting away from the goblin horde. Whatever is happening, just don't be afraid to put little bits of yourself in there, because that's what D&D is about. You're playing this character. You're not yourself. You're playing Pyth. You're playing Oswin. You're playing Hikili. Whoever it is that you have created as this imaginary character, you want to make them feel real for not only, everyone else at the table, but for yourself. So really have fun with it, and don't be afraid to really get into detail. Don't take maybe 20 minutes to talk about every strand of hair that's moving or whatever it may be, but take the time to get the point across to your other people at the table that this is what my character is, this is his vibe, and this is how he looks, because it can really change the game, and it can give just a really positive feel to the gameplay when everyone really understands what everyone's playing. So just give it a go. Think in depth about it if you can, if you have the time. And the more work you put into it, the more fun you're going to have, the more relationships you're going to build, and the more weird spells you're going to be able to cast with your buddies, bottles or hail tombs, whatever it may be. So just give it a go.
Yeah, that's exactly. You don't want to wrap a campaign and have everyone say, "Oh, you were a tiefling?" That's never a good feeling. And honestly, in that same campaign, I had the same issue with Morwen. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I just thought you were a human." No, I was a half elf, and I never really got how to make that stand out for him as well. But I don't think there's ever an issue in D&D to lean even a little bit far into the type that you're trying to play, right? Like with Oswin, I just go, I go full gruff all the time, and he's a craftsman, and he loves ale. Like I've really done all the dwarven things with this character, because I want everyone to know, yeah, this guy's a dwarf artificer, yeah. So and I think all of us have done a pretty decent job at playing to type in that way in Descent into Avernus. So it's really all about making your character distinct. So any ways that, and if you choose human, or you don't want race to be a big part of who your character is, then obviously find other things to make them stand out. But it's these decisions that you make may they'll come up not just before you play, but throughout your journey of your campaign. So just be thoughtful and consider what ways you can really make your character to stand out. And so way in the future when you're thinking back, you can always pick out I really loved Eknon because of all these things about him. So anyway, with that, thank you so much for listening to Table Talk Friday, a D&D podcast. I've been Zach, and that was Drew. If you'd like to support the show, consider following us on Patreon, where Good Old Gamer has been our producer, Eric, for quite a while now. Love you, Good Old Gamer. Thank you for supporting the show. If you'd like to follow our antics, we are on social media in all the regular places. You know the ones. And you can also follow our show wherever you're following it right now. And with that, Drew, why don't you tell us who's going to take us out for this episode?
Zach, I was about to say I was going to have Coca-Cola take us out, but I feel real nostalgic right now, and I don't know if we've ever done this before. So if you're feeling it, if you're feeling confident, can I have the classic, the beloved Oswin Alemaker take us out?
Oh, you know that I can, and thank you, my boy, for teeing me up like that. And remember, if you ever need a drink, you just give Oswald Alemaker a call, and I'll give you something that'll really put some hairs on your chest. Anyway, I'm pretty sure the first time that we did this bit was actually me, so that's kind of fun. And come to think of it, we haven't even mentioned it, but this is it's like the 2-year anniversary of this show or something. So really good planning there, Drew, for teeing me up. So anyway, I suppose it's time for me to take you out. I'll just load my my crossbow there, and we'll line it up, and we'll give you a good old